Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Go-To Food Podcast, brought to you by Blinq, the UK company revolutionising the POS game. And we're delighted to say that we've just renewed our partnership with them as they become headline sponsors on both podcasts. And we should also say that lots of restaurants listening have already jumped to Blinq and are loving their experience. So if you want to pay less, but get more, then join the revolution today. Well, talking of revolutions, we're joined by a man today who grew up sort of worshipping at the altar of fast food, McDonald's, hated sort of getting out of his comfort zone of food, and then goes on to be one of the greatest critics in the country. And of course, you've got a book coming out, which is incredibly exciting, this Thursday as the podcast comes out. Pick, can you talk us through?
Yeah, of course. I've actually got this is bad, but yeah, I have actually got
it out.
Get it out.
Get in the bag,
Jamie.
Jamie.
It's a good visual aid, rather, to just kind of...
Jimmy, we've lost Jimmy on the TV.
Sorry, guys.
So we're on the TV.
Oh, on the TV. Lost both of them.
You exiting stage left somehow.
Yeah.
Took you off the TV as well.
There we go.
It's a beautiful thing.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, Picky, talk us through what we can expect.
Yeah, so the book is kind of like, as you say, like it's the kind of unlikeliness of me becoming a food critic, really, or becoming a restaurant critic. I always feel like food critic. People use the words interchangeably.
Yeah.
I think it should be restaurant critic.
Should be restaurant. Jay
I'm
Renner
not
got
like-
angry when I called
Did
him a food
he?
critic.
Of course. Yeah,
But he
yeah,
just
yeah.
gets angry as it is.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sort of fine with it. I get
Yeah.
what people mean. So yeah, the book really, it just stemmed from, I wrote a book, my first book called Settlers. It was about, it had a sprinkling of memoir. It had a lot more memoir than I thought it was going to, but it was about like Black African diaspora in London, kind of social history. And there was elements of food in it, but I went out and promoted the book and people were like, is this full of food? And I was like, sort of, not really, there's bits. And so everywhere I went, people like wanted this kind of food-focused book for me.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I thought, oh, what would that be? And so I think it is the unlikely story of going from a child who literally was probably quite phobic of like vegetables and fresh fruit. Like, somebody like peeled a banana like in my vicinity, like whatever, and was very into my junk food, very into my kind of, freezer tea. But yeah, so it's kind of so the book really is about different forms of pickiness, I suppose, because it's quite often a thing in restaurant criticism where you're like, if I were to be exceptionally picky, and like, it's kind of it is a kind of trait that you monetize in a weird way, but it's that journey really, and it's almost about, it's like building identity through appetite.
So what was the catalyst when you went from sort of a fast food lover to being sort
Yeah,
of cultured
well,
in your...
to be clear, I do still love fast food.
Yeah, no, of course, who doesn't? But I mean,
but I think, it's funny because obviously I write about this in the book and I've just been thinking about it more and more, having conversations about it. I don't think there was one specific moment. I think it was like a bit of a drip, like kind of you're exposed to more, going to university, like you kind of...
Yeah, there's bits in there where you start to have to like ask your mum for recipes and like and
you
can feel that you're kind of like...
So there was that in adulthood. I think I definitely wanted to like engage with like Nigerian culture and Nigerian food a little bit more. And I think, I don't know, there's an element of cowardice to it, isn't there? Because you're just a bit like, I think a lot of my pickiness stemmed from like, as I think it will with a lot of people that were or are fussy eaters, that fear of like, oh no, I don't know what that is, I don't like it. And I think it was quite stigmatized for me because I was like perennially trying to fit in, like, Nigerian heritage, but like, growing up in an environment where that was quite unusual and there was a big onus on, not unusual, but like, my friendship groups and stuff, there was a big onus on everyone being the same.
Yeah.
So I think I really sort of turtled up into this idea of like, oh no, I don't want to be around anything weird. There's quite a pivotal thing that I remember that I describe in the book, of going to, there was a period in my sort of underage drinking days in like Bexley Heath, like suburban southeast London, where suddenly all my friends who were mostly white English were like, oh, we've got to go out for a curry. We've got to go out. And it was this kind of real sort of rite of passage. And they knew about it and they knew the kind of mores of the curry house and stuff. And of course, as I say in the book, this was curry heavily in inverted commas, right?
Yeah.
Like the sort of, just like those endless, I think I describe it again in the book as like suspiciously cuboid pieces of meat that have just been like put in like radioactive sauces or whatever. But for me, I think I'd always told myself, oh no, I don't like curry. Like I don't like all the smell of it, or like kind of, which is a ridiculous thing. Like coming from like a really spice laden sort of culinary upbringing, right? And then I remember going, we'd go like after we'd like been sort of bumming around like garage clubs, like spending like I always marvel at like I'd go out with like £10 or like £15. I'd somehow have change at the end of the night.
So true.
Yeah, like I think we'd
Probably
like
the pills.
nurse. Yeah, well I don't think it was that. No, we weren't there yet. No. It was more like we'd like nurse a Malibu and Coke, but anyway, that's by the by. And then my friends are like, oh yeah, let's go to this curry house and stuff, and they all know how it works. They're like, oh, we get the poppadoms, we get these, and in that very kind of white English way, get the hottest thing on there. Have you had the foul?
The 8 vindaloos,
and I'm there like kind of looking, scrambling to the back of the menu for something sort of safe. Like I didn't go fully like, there's always an omelette and like omelette and chips in there, and you're like, oh my god, that person that's having an omelette in a curry house, like I kind of want to find them. I want to meet them. It's just been like, I'll have an omelette, please. But it was like there was a thing, and it was just chicken curry. It was just like sort of a training wheels chicken curry
or something.
Yeah, it wasn't even that. I think it was just like a basic like
butter chicken,
almost kind of basically butter chicken. But they were like, oh, we can't call it butter chicken. Maybe that sounds a bit too weird. And so I think that was a really telling moment, because for me, I'm like ping-ponging around and I'm trying to like fit in, and I'm weather vaning. I think I describe it in the book. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I do that as well. Oh yeah, like, and I'm kind of, I've got, as a lot of people that are from immigrant heritage have, but just a lot of people generally, you're just constantly code switching, moving between worlds, right? You get home, you're a certain person, you get out the house and you're a different person. And I think that just really clarified for me that moment in the curry house where all my friends were like really into it and exploring. They were quite adventurous, for like within the bounds of a very sort of anglicised curry house experience. And I'm there being like really terrified. And so I thought, this project of trying to fit in through being quite like fearful around like certain foods like isn't really working, because it's actually doing the opposite. It's quite glaring that I'm not comfortable with that stuff. And then I think another real kind of shift was just starting to like cook more and experiment a little bit more, and then I felt like, I can sort of like try things out a little bit. And I'm
when you're in control.
Like
it's not out of your control.
And like, look, I'm an elder millennial, like clinging on like by my fingertips, like, I'm 41. And so I'm right in the sweet spot for Jamie Oliver sliding down the banister. Before that, Gary Rhodes, Keith Floyd. And I do think a lot of my interest in food is a kind of adjunct to like being obsessed with television, watching TV. Like I've often thought, like, God, if a certain number of like TV producers in the 90s hadn't decided, no, this is our thing, we're going to push this to the fore, I don't know. I think there's a whole generation of us that might not be. So
many people reference them, from Michelin star chefs to critics. It's incredible, and especially Jamie, Two Fat Ladies, all those.
Yeah. And it all just permeated, and I think just like bit by bit, I was like, I would try things, and I'd be like, oh, actually, that's not that bad. And I think, and I do think cooking more was probably quite key.
Do you think putting that, sort of going through that in much more consciousness, like you were nearer to being an adult, then helped when you became a critic?
Yeah, I really do. I really do.
Because a lot of that happens for someone like me when I was a kid. I don't even remember. I just ate everything. So therefore you haven't got that critical kind of...
No, I really do think that. And I think with restaurants as well, it's almost like a kind of like autodidact, like kind of like I've had to like learn. And I always felt this when I was a critic, or when I still am when I write about restaurants. Like I would always just be like, I'm just still trying to like make sense of it all, and I do think it's really helped me. And I think the same tendencies that made me really picky and really kind of like sensitive to like sauces touching things, or things being slightly different, or like kind of certain tastes of things. I still feel now, and it's probably why I'm kind of just quite kind of like analytical about like food and stuff. And I think it now, like even like at home, like. Like my wife will put something on the table, and like I just kind of can't even hear what people are saying. So I need to like decant it, or like, you know, it's like sweet corn. It's like, oh, it's still like in the kind of weird brine, and I'm like, I just can't even focus. I just need
Get
to
that out of there.
Yeah, and just like moving things around, and it's weird. It is a kind of mania. But I definitely think now. I think because I feel like the two are really connected. I think in the book I say fussiness around food is a set of strong opinions without the means to like articulate themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that is another aspect of it. Much later, trying things as they're meant to be, right? Like, you know, you say you hate tomatoes, and I really thought that I did, but I've just been eating terrible tomatoes that aren't seasoned, right? Or like, you know, and like, the sort of magic of like actually seasoning stuff, and so in a weird way, like becoming more interested in food, it just snowballed. Like I just kind of was like, oh, I thought this was one thing, and then I try it, and I'm like, oh God, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Presumably also, once you've broken that wall between you and the food, you're like, well, if I hated that and now I think that's delicious, maybe everything else is now...
full sort of Truman Show, ripping the fabric of like, your reality kind of thing. And I guess then it becomes, and it's been really interesting just talking to people about the book, because so many people were like, oh God, I was really fussy as well. I interviewed Phil Rosenthal, you know, Somebody Feed Phil. And he was like, I like ate nothing. Like, you know, it was just like, I was just all junk food. Like, he was like, I didn't have, because we hadn't traveled, I was kind of influenced by like what my parents cooked, like what they put in front of me. And you're hitched to like other people's appetites and desires so much, aren't you? And so when you don't have agency. So the book is kind of a real sort of untangling of that. But you're right. I think it is really connected. Like, that's where the whole thing of calling it picky came from. Because it feels like, although they seem like polar opposites, there's something connected in that kid who was like, oh my God. You know.
Doubtful.
But
talking about doubt, I mean, it was December 2020 when you get the gig to take over from the legendary Faye Maschler.
Oh my God,
Every time we mention Faye Maschler, we have to remind our listeners that she gave Ben Benton 5 stars.
She did.
For the cock back in the day.
Yeah.
And then it all crumbled. But anyway.
Not Faye's fault.
Not Faye's fault.
She tried her best.
She tried her best. She gave you 5 stars.
From Faye.
Yeah. But
Listen.
talking about doubt, I mean, anyone must have a lot of doubt taking over from a legend like that. But also, when you go to a restaurant and you taste something, do you sometimes go like, fuck, am I the only person who thinks that? Like, do you get scared to say that was incredible?
Oh, massively, And I think also when there's that, and it's getting rarer and rarer these days, or it's getting more interesting because things, you know, they have soft launch, like they have a very sort of cannily run press and like influencer dinner, and it just becomes like, the narrative's building, and and then it becomes like, do you sort of agree with the kind of momentum, or do you kind of push against it? But I think even more so, like when I started like 6 or 7 years ago now, you would have those periods if you're doing like a quieter opening or a quieter launch where there's nothing. There's no other info. You've got nothing to check it against. So I feel like that was really good, but I'm really sort of putting myself out there now, and everyone, and I think there's times when you are gonna you just got to own it, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, maybe that's something that's slightly being lost, but that was always what was really interesting about restaurant criticism, and I read it avidly before I became a critic, where you get varied reactions to things, like
sort of what you want as a punter. Though you're like, that's interesting.
Yeah. And you know, that kind of overlaps with the kind of, you know, the arts criticism type thing, right? Where it's like, you know, people have like completely, like, you know, I don't know, like Jonathan Jones and Eddie Frankel when he was at the Time Out, have completely different responses to like an exhibition. And I used to really love that. But you're totally right. There's a moment where you're like, I think what I'll say is you learn to like hopefully trust your instincts, but also recognize, maybe there's a bit of context here, or there's a bit of kind of, you know, I don't know, a bit of sort of soft soaping in some ways where you're like, I kind of quite like that. Do you know what I mean? I think, or sometimes it goes the other way where a critic will kind of lash out because it's like somebody is kind of being built up too much. Like,
so you can see that. You're like, he's just tried to sort of redress the balance.
I think so, But it's so hard to untangle. It's hard to kind of keep yourself fresh. I do definitely have certain dishes. Like, I really remember the 4 legs burger when it was at Compton Arms, right? And like, I wrote a review of that, and I loved that when I was at ES Magazine we would do that, because that was a pub residency,
like residency,
right? And like, you know, there'd be an argument maybe in some respects, like, oh, are we really going to do this? And like, it's
I mean, you got that right.
Yeah, exactly.
They went on, right?
Exactly, right. And I remember we didn't even order the burger initially. Like, we were sat there, and it was so early days. Like, no one really knew what it was. Like, obviously, the 4 Legs boys like had like really, you know, they had good pedigree, and there was a little bit of buzz that was building up, but it was so early. And I think that's it, that kind of where you're just kind of, you know, first footprints in the snow type thing. And I saw one of the burgers go past like to another table, and I was like, I think we need to get the burger. And then I remember tasting it, and I was like, and we all tried it. There were like 3 of us, and I was like, I think that might be one of the best things I've ever eaten.
Yeah.
But you just don't know. Yeah. Like, you sort of put it out there, and you're hoping that you're right, because there's many other like times where, you know, I've given something 5 stars, or I've gone really strong, or I've been like, this is incredible, and then it can be a little bit bruising if people are like, what are you?
What's the other?
Is there an element?
There's an implicit kind of like, you know, and with the other critics and stuff, and like, you know, I see a lot of them when we're on MasterChef and stuff, and it is, I mean, that is one of those things where it is brilliant, those kind of off-camera chats. Where it's like, where have you gone that's good recently? And I think it's quite nice, because there's kind of And look, this I think is related to the book and part of the journey that I've been on, where I kind of trust in my judgments and my kind of perspective, right? And I think when you come to something like the restaurant world and food media from very much outside of it, and didn't grow up even in a restaurant going, you know, like family, you have like major imposter syndrome. But I think as you grow into it and you know your voice and you see the value in like, oh, actually, maybe there is.
It must be quite terrifying going to the bear pit. Like, every other person was 40 years old.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
They're also big characters.
They'll enjoy that.
I mean,
they're 40 years older than me.
I know. It's not as bad as Charles Corney, so they're all sort of working or writing for.
So it was like Saga Holidays.
Holidays
at the
FT. But what was it like going there? And like, did they support you? Like, when you got the gig from magazine to paper, do you get messages from the others, or like, we've heard from a lot, it's quite a cold world at times?
Yeah, I think yes and no. I felt like there was a lot of support, actually, and people like Marina and Jay were very, like, when I first got the job at ES Magazine, because I was very much someone that was an unknown quantity, and like, you get it a bit now where there's kind of vacant positions and people are betting on who it's going to be and maybe this person, and so I kind of was an outsider in some respects.
Had you put yourself forward? Were you like, I like the look of that gig?
No, like
how does that come about?
For ES Magazine, I was a known quantity. I was a regular freelance for them. I was a known quantity to the Standard. I'd actually been on the features desk in-house, like editing. I say editing with heavy inverted commas because no one edits Faye. 5 stars for Ben.
She probably on that one she needed.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just like, are you sure? Apparently, should we go back? Should we hold it? So I, for a while, I was like, I was on point for like Faye, and so, you know, put headlines on her copy. I was kind of like liaised with her and sort of back and forth, and I, you know, vividly remember the likes of Black Axe Mango as it was then, and, you know, Frenchie when it came to. I really remember sort of having to edit those pages. So anyway, I was only there for a year, but I was a known quantity to the Standard, and ES Magazine, as you know, other papers or publications have done, we're going through this guest reviewer of the week thing, and loads of people have done it. People have done it twice. It was a mixture of like politicians, celebrities, but a lot of kind of experienced restaurant reviewers. And I'd written bits about food, but I'd done just a bit of everything. So I come from the sort of men's magazine world, where you're kind of just like, the idea of a specialism. You're just like a specialist in everything.
Yeah.
Like your boss comes over and it's like, right, I need this about
Date
Speedway.
nights.
You need to like know about
Creative.
Speedway
Right,
for
here we go.
for like
Yeah.
200 words. Yeah, basically. So anyway, I was a known quantity and I was asked to do a first review. It went really well, and I was asked straight back. I had no sense.
What was the first one?
It was Incognito, which is a bit of a like nothing burger of a restaurant, like a Pan Asian in quite a nice spot. But I just remember having such a clear sense of how I wanted to approach it, and I think a lot of the review is mostly about like Soho just being off its head when the sun comes out, and like wafts of like spliff smoke and people being half naked and stuff, and then it's like, oh yeah, and there was this food there. And I think I might have like compared a cocktail to like a liquefied hall soother, and so you're like, okay, quite pleased with that one.
I'm happy with that.
So who inspired who inspired that kind of writing? Because obviously Jay is sort of says, it's sort of 80% about the context around the food.
Yeah.
Giles Cron exists just to shock you. Like, what sort of bits were you inspired by that?
I guess you take bits of everyone. I'd been reading Faye and like that rigor, the rhythms of it, the sort of the release of information. Like I think because I've worked as a features editor and like I've edited a lot of copy, I've worked on that side of it a bit, and I read a lot, right? I read a lot of different forms of writing. So I think I absorbed a lot of it, and I think, and I write about this in the book, there's a chapter all about becoming a critic and the sort of ups I say ups and downs. Like, I mean, it's been pretty good, like, but like all the kind of all the different aspects of it. And I talk about the fact that, like, restaurant criticism is such a strange thing, because there's an accepted form, but it's not set down anywhere. It's almost like oral tradition. Like you read it and you absorb it. And so like ripping off Jonathan Gold without even really knowing who Jonathan Gold is, right? Like, and so I think there was that, but I think a lot of my writing, I still do it now, but a lot of my writing before I started writing more about food was interviews with all sorts of people, like a lot of the time film, like, actors, musicians, and it was all about atmosphere and kind of sort of descriptive kind of vigor, and I really love that. I love making people laugh, but I also love having that curiosity, that surprise, like pleasure in phrasing, but also just really kind of giving someone a sense of what it feels like to be in that room, to the scent of it, the sounds, like kind of I think I quite often start there. But to be honest, the truth is, and the hardest thing I always find, I think a lot of restaurant reviewers will say this, is like the first bit. Like, what do you anchor it on? I just always felt like there had to be something more to it. Like it can just be, here's this place, here's what to order, here's why you should care, here's whether it's any good or not. But it just always felt to me like there's a wider story or a wider narrative. And actually, a lot of the time, what you'd almost end up like reverse engineering, or you have something you want to say that's just kind of lingering there, and you're waiting for the right restaurant or the right opening. That's a vessel for that, right? Like, whether it's about a certain part of town, whether it's about a certain cuisine, whether it's about a particular form of like blockbusting Devonshire adjacent pub, right? Like, there are these wider trends that I tend to kind of lock in on, and I really want to sort of nail. You don't always get it right, but
But over those 7-8 years, did you feel your power as a critic be sucked away? Not just for the paper you work for, but as the wider context of being a critic. Because I think nowadays, I mean, they're saying something I was reading the other day. Most people under a certain age just type into TikTok the name of a restaurant, and that's enough for them, which is quite sad. Or they listen to the award-winning Go To Food podcast. I don't know. What is the relevance of that nowadays?
I guess, I probably was conscious of it. What I would say, because I think there's been a lot of this, and I just hear it and like chats out with people, and they're like speaking to people in their 20s and they're like, I do not read restaurant reviews. Like that's not, like restaurant discovery comes from social media. What I would say is like from conversations with people that are restaurant publicists and chefs, a review of the right restaurant in the right location can still have a massive impact.
100%.
Like, you know, like whether it's, you know, the alchemy of like footfall and the kind of the particular crowd or readership or whatever, it can still have like an enormous impact. Like, you know, obviously it's quite a small restaurant, but like I was messaging, what is his name? Oh my God, I'm going blank. Lucia's head chef there. I've gone blank on his name. It'll come back to me. Joe, that's his name. And like I was messaging him about something else, and like he was just like, I really owe you for that review, man. Like that was kind of, you know, a massive thing. And you just don't really, so it can be a bit mixed messages because you're hearing people say, oh my God, this has had a massive impact, thank you, and you're getting that gratitude. But equally, there is probably a sense of dwindling power. Yeah. And I think a lot of that just comes from, it's just a lot more like fractured. Like there's just so many different elements. And we were talking before we got on mic about video content, right? And I feel like I'm just like, you know, I've been doing this thing, these interviews for like Soho Food Scene.
You're the official ambassador of Soho.
Yeah. Huh?
You're like the king of Soho.
I know, yeah.
You're wearing a crown or something.
Yeah. Driving some like sheep through here or something. Like, I'm just the mayor of Soho.
Exercising my rights.
In my mayoral robes, so it's great to do something like that, but it also is kind of quite chilling, the degree to which it's like, video's immediacy just trumps everything, and people are like, "Oh, brilliant! I'm going to try that place." Well, like, you know, whereas like, you know, the person I'm married to doesn't always read my reviews. Like, I don't think she's read one in ages. You know, it's kind of it's an unavoidable reality.
But yours are least accessible.
Yeah,
whereas Jolof's is Jay's. More examples. I guess.
It's
they're
going
all behind
paywall,
right?
So
it just seems to be more and more restrictive. Even when Jay writes a great review, I'd love to read.
You can't get in there. I think I can see both sides of that, right? Because as they're businesses, I think like
I know they do it, but I mean,
No, but you're right, and I do think when we think back to, I do feel like quite apart from me and doing the work for like the last few years, like a loss of like primacy, right? Like when was the last time you remember? Because there would be really like viral restaurant reviews, wouldn't there? Normally it'd be
talk
like
about it, you know,
like the Salt Bay one that I did, most views ever. People in like, you know, football WhatsApps being like forwarding it, like not you know. And I just don't think those really happen anymore. Think about like Pete Wells's reviews and that kind of the way these things would just like catch fire and go really far. But I think you're right. I think there's a bit of a, and I understand it because you're sort of trying to like, you're trying to kind of like mostly just like serve your audience that are paying rather than like, you know, just letting it seep out. But I do think it does feel quite atomized. It feels like everyone's kind of doing their own thing in their own kind of way. And actually, I think that's also reflected in, you used to be able to, for better or worse, you used to be able to like track the arc of like, okay, new opening, like, you know, Towns, like just opening. Yeah. And it's like, oh, like, I wonder what Grace is going to think of that. And I can't wait to see what Jay thinks of that. And then we'll get like, you know, that. And like with Faye, like her commitment to like speed, right? And being out quickly. I mean, it was always the line that she was like in like, like when the sort of like the Farrow and Ball was still going up or you could still like wet paint. Like, you know, she was, but I kind of loved that immediacy because it was like, and look, you can weigh you can go back and forth on the, I'm sure like restaurateurs would be like, can you just give us a week or so to get our feet under the table? But I kind of loved that you sort of knew where everyone was going to go in some ways. But now, and it's really interesting, but it's a different thing. There is that kind of track of, oh, here's the new openings that people are talking about. But there's also, you know, like someone's doing something that's like a shack in like, you know, like Iceland, or like someone's like doing some, like particularly around summer when you get these ones that are like in New York, and then someone's doing one from like that's been open for 3 years. Like, you know, it does feel, it feels a lot more fractured, like not just the food media landscape, but like the reviewing landscape. Like,
definitely
it's not the same kind of like, which I love, like relaying it to that thing about arts columnists, where it's like they're almost in conversation with each other, right? And I think
I really miss
exciting.
that bit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no,
like, because there's the sort of Vittles, Jonathan Nunn, real like ground up, like finding the hidden gem. That is great.
Yeah.
Then you've got Top Jaw, which I know part 2 of Jimi's
Yeah,
Top
I
Jaw
just saw that
recently
as I literally just walked in.
Which is great, and they shout out new places, old places, and people are giving. But like that bit you're describing, the conversation, the kind of like zeitgeisty bit where everyone's that does seem to have washed away.
To
some degree.
Yeah, and I understand it. Look, like, you know, that is the inescapable side of this, that, you know, media companies and newspapers, and you know, they're in a sort of existential fight, right? And they're trying to do different things, but yeah, I do worry, not worry, like, but yeah, it does feel like there's maybe a bit of like devaluing going on. Like it's kind of seen as a kind of nice to have, and like a bit of a frippery, but that just seems quite. But again, it feels quite mixed messages, because food is growing in so many senses. Look at this podcast.
I know.
Top Jaw.
That's what's so confusing.
Yeah.
There's more restaurants than ever.
Yeah,
so you think there'd be more opportunities to review.
But then also there's restaurants. I mean, death of late night dining.
Yeah.
The tax changes. I mean, is this the worst you've ever actually seen the health of the industry? Even though like things are popping up around it.
Yeah.
The actual survival rate of restaurants and then being able to put food on the table.
It's grim. It's really grim. But I think there's such a paradox within restaurants, because there's just this constant projection of everything's great, like we're opening, right, you know, and that has shrunk, but like the big openings keep coming. I don't want to like mark them out, because I love them as a restaurant. But like Kudu moving from Peckham to Marylebone,
I saw that.
Feels like a little bit of a tell, in terms of, if you're trying to make a restaurant work in a certain place in a time when people haven't necessarily got the same means to like spend, so it projects a future. And Kudu's a brilliant restaurant. What they do is amazing, but they need to actually exist as a restaurant, for sure. And so I have but that just felt like a little bit of a tell to me about where we are, that it's like just concentration in areas where there are people that can pay. And like, even just round here, like near your studios, it's interesting to see, because I ride around on my little folding bike, and I'm like, oh wow, that's there. Like Pyro, this new kind of Greek live fireplace, I was like, oh, that's there. And then you look round, and it's like, you can just, I do feel like every other launch, it does just feel like there's a kind of conservatism and there's like a aversion to risk. Like, there's still exciting things happening, but every other launch is a kind of Parisian inspired, like
there's some like key
or like, you know, there's another big smash burger place, or a kind of
around here. It's funny to see, you go past 2 places within 10 meters. One is Michelin star chef turns his hand to burgers.
Yes,
and then next door it's Michelin star chef's take on pizza.
Yes,
and it seems like people are now using the kind of accreditation of a Michelin star to then move into something which is more affordable. You can flip 1,000 times a day rather than
and that to me feels very linked to TikTok, social media, the likes of those kind of tags, those kind of branding, like buzz terms, because it's like, I think, and look, this is what. I've spoken at a few events, and I've spoken about the fact that for all that there is infinite choice now, the fact that people are still cleaving to like, oh, it's Michelin starred, or oh, this is the best ever. Like, I think there is a kind of like, there's a need for these kind of like approval, like these kind of signs that it's, oh no, this is good, this is like the best, or it's viral, or it's the kind of, you know, it's the top, it's the Michelin starred. And yeah, you're right. Like, that feels like another significant tell, and there's a real emphasis on like comfort now, right? And people kind of doing the same thing.
I know.
Yeah, but people want to know that they're getting
But also restaurants like, I know you spoke to the guys at Onda, right, in Manchester.
Yeah,
just suddenly went from having no bookings to being booked up for 6 months.
Draw,
just for the tiramisu.
You can see
they're
why,
the draw.
Yeah,
but it's crazy. Or like Fallow, they make what, £35,000 a month?
Yeah,
on just doing YouTube.
Yeah.
So like, at what
so
stage
it becomes a revenue stream?
Yeah. But at what stage does sort of content for a restaurant become? It's sort of kind of like the Truman Show. Like, where's the balance? Are you a restaurant or are you a?
Yeah.
Because if you're getting £30,000 and you're not having to offset any of that against any, you know what I mean? That's just profit for them. And you can do that film for half an hour once a week.
Yeah.
Compared to employing 60 people, running 3 restaurants, paying. I don't know. It seems weird.
But then I guess like what they are in the midst of doing and have been doing is it becomes circular. Like, you know, the content becomes the engine to fill the tables, and they get specific things on that they can then sort of, you know, they do a particular video where it's like this, you know, a steak challenge thing, and then they've got all these steaks that they've kind of apportioned to the content budget, and then they can sort of feed back into the business and sell it. People are like, oh, we saw the steak challenge, and they put on a steak special, so it becomes this circular thing. But it's not easy, right?
No, it's not.
Hard.
That's what I was just thinking. It looks like a shoe-in, but
I was there, you know, for that Observer Food Monthly piece. Like I was there for like the filming day for. With Will and Jack, and it's like, you know, they're in this kitchen rattling through like 12 different dishes and on camera and stuff, and it's hard, you know, and like it's kind of like, to what end? It's kind of what you need to do now, but I'm sure there's other restaurateurs from other eras that are like, oh my god, we just had to like get a 5-star review or like be decent or be in a great location. We were just printing money, and like now as restaurants and I see it, right, there's so many places that I don't want to say exactly where it was, but I was like going to really sort of hyped, like building up, and I wrote a review of it, and then over the road, and I couldn't get in, I couldn't get a table because it was just like, oh yeah, sorry, we've got no walk-ins. Then over the road was somewhere that was like darling of like within the pandemic and doing really well, and used to be like absolute popping off. It's got an outdoor space, so ideal. The sun was shining, and there was like no one in there. And like I saw the chef, and he was like, yeah, you know, it's tough, like, hard to stay relevant, right? And it's the
well, that's the thing when everyone's chasing the exciting new thing. Yeah. Being good loses some of its value,
of its like value or like currency or whatever. And I guess, and I guess it's like, can you transcend to just become this self-perpetuating thing? But I wonder, like, you know, if you're at a really high level, like even like somewhere like the Devonshire, or even somewhere like, you know, One Club Row now, and they're just like, we need to sustain this. Like, you know, we need to find ways to maintain this level. Because even if it like dips a little bit, you're like, oh my god, guys, like, no one's talking about it.
It's like gambling. Once you get used to a £100 win, even if you get 90 quid, it doesn't touch the side.
Yeah, exactly.
We were speaking to Semiet Taner recently, you know, owner of Jamavar and loads of other restaurants, and she was saying like they're just having to completely rethink how they run everything, timings, because people now want to eat at 6 p.m. right? Like the death of late night dining. You obviously came up through the 2010s where it was sort of one list menu items and like making fast food bougie. What are your memories of that period and how you've seen it change?
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. I wrote a piece for my Good Food Guide column about this because, Jeremy King's kind of call to arms seemed to like really capture the imagination. I just love like Jeremy King being this kind of like debonair, septuagenarian sort of hellraiser though. He's like, why are you all being lame? Like, why are you all like, just like Jeremy King, like dapper sesh head. But I completely have felt that, and I've seen that, and like speaking to different restaurateurs about 6:30 being prime time, and actually if you've got a small restaurant, how do you make that work if everyone wants to eat at the same time and no one wants to eat late? And so it does feel really different. I remember you know, as you say, it was Brixton Market, it was, you know, the likes of like Shrimpies, and it was like, you know, Pick You, and it was adjacent to things like Street Feast, and so it was dining that tended to kind of be a bit later, and kind of even the likes of like, I remember going to like Spontino and stuff, and that was like very much an evening, like pitch up late kind of thing. Like I like, it's funny because obviously Polpo is big, but Spontino was the real one for me, that I really remember walking up to it and being like, is this the place? There's no sign.
Yeah.
Should we just pretend that it's fine, that there's no sign and it's like really dark in there? Like, and that was such a great restaurant. Anyway, I think it's a really interesting one, but somewhere like Blood Sports, and I saw a point put across. I went to Noodle and Beer as well, which apparently is open till 4 a.m, the new one in Chinatown. And so I think it's kind of a kind of cuisine. I made the point in that Good Food Guide thing. I think there's a few different things happening, right? Like, people live further out of cities, so they are like getting home's a bit more of a conversation. I see it in my own like friendship groups, right? It's like, I've got to get off. Like, you know, we're not eating now. I think there's also a desire to like eat early and then maybe go on somewhere else, right? Because I feel like not all pubs are booming, but certain pubs are booming. I mentioned the Devonshire, Knave of Clubs. Like, I went to the Fat Badger the other day and like went in there and it was like mobbed, right? And loads of people have already eaten. I'd eaten at Dove earlier that night. People have eaten at Canteen. And so there's a lot of, I do feel like people are still out, but they're not necessarily eating.
Right, just doing a different thing,
Yeah, and so I think there's a few elements of that. Maybe it's also, it's just all converging, I think, like lack of money to spend. But I do think food that maybe is a little bit more simple. I guess the flip side of this, and like you may be able to speak to this, like as I was writing that piece, I was like, you know, there was all this onus around the pandemic on staff well-being within hospitality and staff retention, and maybe we don't need to like kill ourselves. Maybe we don't want to like, obviously people want to work for profitable businesses. Yeah, there's shift work, and maybe people could work later. The other narrative that I'm seeing is just people simplifying things so that they can just be run by one or two people, and so that they don't need, so that they get their staff costs right down. How do you do that while also kind of, you know, seating people up until 11 or like 4 in the morning or whatever? Like, it does feel like there's loads of contradictory kind of messages.
Yeah, I imagine there's chefs that are loving it.
Yeah.
When you used to get that last order in at 10:30, it'd be like, you fucking joking.
Yeah.
And so like people sitting down at 6:30, 9:30, you're kind of packing up, and that must feel great. And
also, as somebody that has done a lot of this and eats in a lot of restaurants, not always the best at like 9, that last kind of, you know, that last, like that sort of like last, oh, you've got one more table left, then it's just like whacked.
It's almost been sat there for hours, or they just can't be asked.
Exactly.
Sometimes you just turn out a hero pork chop or something.
Yeah.
You give it everything you've got.
Right under
but I do know what you mean.
Yeah. Like, and I've definitely felt that. Like, I can think of 1 or 2 restaurants where I've had an incredible lunch or I've had an incredible meal like right at the start of service. Yeah. And I've gone back and it's been like,
what's happened?
What's going on? Started drinking already. So I like a lot of things with going back to my point, it does just feel like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and it's quite a smoke and mirrors-y industry, right? There's a lot of projection of health and strength, and we're going to be all right, we're going to get through it, and it's such survivors, like people in hospitality, and that's
hustlers.
Like hustlers, and that's what makes hospitality so brilliant. But then, and I really felt this during the pandemic, that willingness to just adapt was maybe like working against the industry in some respects, because it was like, oh, you'll find a way, we'll find a way, we'll find an opportunity, and it's like, oh no, this actually needs to be like,
that's so true, actually,
some form of like intervention, like I don't know what, like it's just such a tough time.
Well, Jimmy, just before we carry on, today's episode is brought to us by our brilliant friends Blinq, the UK-based legends who are turning the POS game on its head. They're also involved in our other show. It's an incredibly exciting time. And probably because they're offering no long-term contracts, no hidden fees, no per device charges. If you run a restaurant and you're listening, you'll know how painful traditional POS systems can be. They're clunky, they're slow, and worst of all, they're expensive. Well, Blinq's different to all that. It's the first POS system in the world that needs zero training. Your team can be up and running in a matter of minutes. It's built for real hospitality workflows. And guess what? It costs just £49 a month for unlimited devices and 24/7 UK-based support. That's in comparison to most charging at least £150 up to £300. And they give you a limited setup. Anyway, save money, no stress, no tech headaches. Blinq want to save you money, so use the code GOTOBLINQ, BLINQ, and you'll get your first month for free. Get on it now. And also, we've got a competition coming where we're going to be giving away a whole year's worth of POS systems for free through Blinq. So keep your eyes peeled for that in the coming weeks. What a time to be alive. Like, as Sammy was saying as well, she was like, I think you can't hope it's going to go back.
Yeah.
Everyone says, like, oh, it will go back eventually.
Yeah,
It's like pre-COVID.
yeah.
But she's like, at this point, it's not going to, like,
No.
you've just got to go to yourself. It ain't going to change.
Yeah.
So what's the reality now? How do we survive?
Yeah.
Rather
And that
than going,
idea
like,
of like discounts and sort of like...
lunch menus which people can afford,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting as well that there are, there's... It's kind of pre-theatre, really. But this goes back to that point of restaurants like spotting opportunities and like making late night a little bit more of a thing maybe, and sort of deals like later on. Like,
well, like Jeremy's giving 25% off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And all these things, right, are born from there's an opportunity. We've got a really quiet service. Yeah. And like you see it now, right? And I think if you know anything about the industry, it's like there are these kind of, it's like restaurants semaphoring what's going on. It's like, we're so happy to introduce our new Tuesday service. It's like all Tuesdays are rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
with the whole breakfast thing and Fallow, when I interviewed them, like Will was talking about that, like breakfast is like, or brunch is like one of the biggest and most profitable services now, and it was dead. That is born from it just being dead, right? Yeah. And so there are opportunities to be had here. But yeah, you're right. I think so much of it is, and the social media aspect comes into it, right? So much of it is just kind of a bit mysterious. Like it's like what works, what pops up, what pops off, like dining habits. Yeah, but it's fascinating, right?
Yeah,
and I think it's really interesting to talk about and see what's happening. But I do worry about just everything getting quite samey.
Yeah,
like it's why something as preposterous as it was, as like the Yellow Bittern, just seemed to like just be this perfect storm of all these different things that we were like.
Well, and that was one as well that got all the critics involved. Like it felt like old school restaurant time, because really everyone had an opinion. Salt Bay was the one before that did a similar thing. Everyone had to have a take on it. Which then everyone hated, but actually it was such a discussion around it. It was fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. And just that thing of like, I went out just somewhere like a nice cafe near me where I'll kind of work sometimes, and there were these two like girls, probably in their 20s, like, and they shared a granola.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, okay.
I know.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, yeah, these restaurants aren't kidding. Like, and look, who am I to say, right? Like, because I think that's the thing that a lot of people have like eloquently put, but that was the thing that was driving me mad within that, like. You need to do a better job of telling people how to use your restaurant, or set like boundaries or guardrails. Like if you need that minimum spend, like do a set menu and like put bolt-ons on that they can like do. Like,
but even on the high end at Anglo Thai, John was saying that he had 3 people come in and try and split 2 set menus. In a fucking Michelin-style restaurant.
I think the thing as well that's changed is like, when I was in restaurants,
the sort of clout chasing of like, I've been
got to go there, but we just want to split a menu.
Yeah.
But we used to have a thing where you'd happily do what you're saying because you're seeding like future regulars. So you let someone come in and split a main course.
In hindsight, it was massively underpriced.
Oh, it was terrible. No, but my point is, you felt like, well, I'm going to be around 5 to 10 years, so like, almost like giving away free software now. They're going to become a regular. Whereas I don't think people have the a restaurant isn't guaranteed that longevity anymore. No. So you can't be like, we're seeding future regulars. I think
that's a really good point. Like habit building, looking after people.
Yeah.
You sort of, and I think, increasingly as people are just like, well, why can't we just like share one dish? Both photograph it, do a video. What's bad about that? Like, and like even things like they're just having like tap water. Like, okay, that might just be people that are on like a very strict budget, but what are your alcohol-free options? Like,
true.
Like there's literally an opportunity there, right? Like, there's a chance to like do something.
100%.
Like,
also, do you think? I mean, it's a discussion we've had off air, but like customers in general care as much about provenance of some of the food of these places, farm to table, high-end organic stuff, or do they just want good food at good prices?
Yeah, I think up to a point, and I think you probably see it shift when like times are hard, right? And it just isn't. And I do think there is. I did see it. I've got a really fixed memory in my mind of like quite a well-known like chef just like railing about the degree to which young chefs like just want to talk about seasonality and like, provenance and like the ingredients and stuff, and it becomes this thing that's like but you know, you can't really argue because we're doing this. I'm just the conduit for this amazing produce, and I think there's that's really important, and I think we still need to get so much better because again, like to go back to my book, I just had no sense or no relationship with any of this stuff. It all just came from a supermarket, and I think I was very into that. I want it to like be a perfectly formed potato smiley face, and I want it to be like, you know, food that looks like, you know, like kind of like Fisher Price kind of like Play-Doh food or whatever. And I could have really stood to have more of a connection to like, oh, this is why this is like really delicious and this is where it comes from. But yeah, I think it is something that probably there's a bit too much onus put on it sometimes, like
definitely.
And yeah, I saw something the other day where it was like, oh, this is very much, you know, we're a chef led, or like, you know, it's very much like all about like chefs and stuff. And I was a bit like, should it be? Like, you know, I was just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know what the answer or what the solve is, but it does seem like sometimes there is just like a lot of onus on that, on provenance that is, you know, what's it called? Swiss butter. Is that what it's called? It's like a steak and entrecote. Like place, but it's like basically like Dubai born, like mega cheap, like just getting in loads of students and stuff. It's one of those really sort of like one of those ones that humbles you, where I like really slagged it off. It's still got a queue outside the door. Every time I go past it, I'm like, well, you know, there's your power, mate. Exactly. But you know, no one's going in there and asking like where their sort of leathery steaks come from, like you know, or they're like you know, catering fries. Like it's like, I think this is the thing that is underwriting a lot of it at the moment. Value. Unless you're targeting a particular, you know, probably ever dwindling set of customers that will pay, like, you know, for the kind of Dorians of this world, right? It's value.
Yeah.
And everyone, you know, the amount of kind of loss leading specials that like I'm seeing now, and kind of like, you know, early in the week kind of specials and stuff. And I think as a punter, like, you can massively benefit, right? You can eat some incredible food now for like not very much money, but you've just got to worry about the longevity of that. Like,
definitely,
you know, the amount of places that just aren't making money.
Jimmy, I know you've got to go in 15.
Oh yeah,
so
I have. Yeah,
we've got to rattle through a couple of things. Firstly,
get into my bag down here.
Yeah. So Ben, we always create something for the guest. Ben will take us through what he's done in a second. But I want to quickly ask, I'm looking at your beautiful face every week, and suddenly David Ellis is there chatting away. What actually happened at the Standard, London Standard, Evening Standard, whatever the fuck you call it nowadays?
There was a restructure. They sort of wanted to make a change. That was kind of what I'd been told.
But it was from sex to then the Victorian era. You know what
I mean? It was... Look, a lot of people, and what I always want to say is like, 'cause people are like, oh, like you lost your job. I had a contract with the Standard. I wasn't actually an employee, but like a lot of people, you know, a lot of people that were employees at the Standard at that time, like 70 staff were like let go. So look, I was told that it was part of that, and yeah, it's just one of those. It's just one of those things. Like, this is the weird thing.
It must have been quite frustrating, though.
Oh yeah, look, it was really, and it has been. Yeah, it's been quite weird. It's been quite surreal to have something that you really put a lot into. You've kind of won awards. Yeah. You're like. You don't feel like you've grown like complacent, like you still take it really seriously. You
can't say it, but they did you dirty. They did. And it's also, a fucking travesty.
But also, you're like a sexy man about the scene. You know what I mean? Like, no, but being serious, like you make food cool. Whereas like a lot of the people are, as we said earlier, like slightly more old school. Yeah.
Well, look, but
even Ellis looks 60. I mean,
but another man who's 40 years Jimmy's senior.
Amazing. Oh, wow, that sounds great. I was not expecting this. Brilliant. You massively are.
Well, you have to tell us on the mic then.
Yeah. So, there's incredible. I'll explain what's in front of me.
Well, go on, take us through it then.
Brilliant cheese.
Instead of Ben.
Teas. Right, so I think there's a beautiful jollof just hopping with spice and seasoning. I'm getting like pepper and bit of curry powder, which is actually in jollof rice, which makes the whole me telling myself I didn't like curry thing even more absurd. Yeah. Beautiful chicken leg. Always go for the leg. I definitely learned that lesson growing up. Like with a really lovely sort of sauce on it, and then 3 fried plantain.
Oh. I wish there were more than 3, but you know what?
As
I was frying them off.
Budget cuts.
No, mate, I just couldn't. I snack on them when you're frying them off.
Yeah, that's true.
It should have been about 5 or 6 each.
Chef's treat. Yeah. Amazing. Oh, no, this is amazing, guys. Brilliant. So, like, just to end that thought on the standard, like, look, it's one of those things. It's frustrating. I think it works both ways because I think you are conscious of... And for all that, like, restaurant critics are like, these all-powerful beings or whatever, they're ultimately, like, editors can leave, like, the landscape can change. But look, I'm hoping
you chuck your name in the hat for the observer.
Look, I would love to write about restaurants in a kind of column, regular column again soon. And I'm still hoping.
Tell me Tortoise Media have been on the email. So, come on, Jimmy.
Couldn't possibly say.
Right, Jimmy, I know you're going to try that, but also we don't have much time, so we're going to have to try and work.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll give it a go.
So
did you make this?
Yeah.
Come on, Ben. I love
What's
that.
appearing in a drink form? Is that a little Guinness?
It's a little Guinness, because I read in Jimmy's book that in your household, even if the kids, this is seen as a health drink, right? Guinness?
Yeah. My paternal grandma would like give me little nips of Guinness when I was like basically a baby, because I think there's this thing throughout like the diaspora where it's like it's basically medicine. And so me and my
was it African Guinness though? Right?
African stout. No, that's the one.
This the original.
This is as close as possible. Yeah, not the nitro one.
No.
Oh my god, this is great.
Are we in the right?
Oh, massively.
I'll be honest with you. It's the first jollof I've ever made.
Did you get some Maggi?
Yeah, Maggi.
Did you get the yellow?
Yeah. Which I've now planned to just dab on absolutely everything. It's
really
delicious stuff.
Yeah. Well, I was a bit like, wow, Mum, how'd you get stuff to taste so good? Basically MSG.
Yeah.
MSG,
yeah. Little Maggi.
I know, all cultures apart from Britain is like,
goes
hard on
it.
I don't know, we just slowly...
This is great. I love the stew. I love the heat of the stew. It's kind of... Because I think that's the thing about West African cuisine and Nigerian cuisine especially. The heat hits, but it's not like...
overbearing.
Yeah, it's not like a kind of like instant sort of like, oh my God,
just,
like burn.
But it's there.
It's just like a mellow like build. And it's all in that onion flavour, like kind of the slow build of flavour.
Like, it's delicious. Yeah.
We're going to do a quick section called Go To Reviews. So Quickfire.
Go on.
Worst restaurant you've ever reviewed?
No one will remember this, but there was one in Richmond in a hotel, and it was so bad. It was genuinely like edged in towards like performance art, kind of like what is going on there. Like absentee executive chef, like clearly trying to get a kitchen to like cook things. Like I think as a restaurant critic, a lot of the time there's almost like a contract where you're like, I can't say this looks like poo, but there were these fecal blobs of chocolate mousse that I just couldn't. There wasn't anywhere else to go.
Yeah.
Right? So that restaurant in Richmond was absolutely amazing, amazingly bad.
How long did it last?
Not very long, I don't think, no. And it was funny because it was one of the first times I'd taken an old mate from uni along who knows his food. And he was like, are you kidding? Yeah. Like, what is going on? And I was like, sorry, mate, might get thanks for playing. Like, that is the thing. Like, if anybody, it'd be great to know a restaurant critic.
Yeah. No,
sometimes they will be terrible.
Yeah. So on the flip side, favourite review you've ever written?
Oh, favourite review I've ever written. Oh, that's a tough one. Do you know what? I have a real... Oh, actually, and it's fitting given what we're eating. I loved writing about 805 in the old on the Old Kent Road, which is, famously the Nigerian restaurant that John Boyega took Harrison Ford to.
Cool.
And so, I don't know, like little things like that. I feel like stuff like that was a real kind of like, felt to me like a real moment where I was like feeling very confident in the role and able to kind of talk about places like that with confidence.
Yeah.
And I think I definitely was emboldened by the likes of Eater and Vittles later on, and to just be a bit like, because I'd definitely grown up with that idea of like, there's a certain kind of thing that's a restaurant, there's a certain kind of acceptable cuisine, and I took my whole family along to that.
Yeah, nice.
I just it was really fun, and it was great to write that. And
I've always wondered about that. How far can you stretch the expense budget?
Oh my god.
Because you can't just go and eat on your own, right?
Yeah,
Otherwise you only try one dish at a
Yeah, that's true, although sometimes you do.
Really?
Right? Because I mean, this is the other kind of reality of it. You just can't always, people are, that's brilliant, I'll definitely be there, and you're like, right, I need you to come to Mayfair at 2:00 on Monday, and they're like, sorry
mate.
Yeah, and quite often I would just like stuff myself to like,
really,
distension.
Worst abuse you've ever got from a chef for a review, or for anything?
I think I got some stuff from like Salt Bay sort of had some outriders with like a kind of like, I don't know, some sort of Salt Bay surrogates were like in my mentions just being like, you don't know what you're talking about, like just still caping up.
So quickly, for those who don't know about it, I mean, most people in the world have seen it.
Yeah, of course.
10 seconds on the Salt Bay review. You were fed by the man himself, right?
I was, yeah. And I'm so happy that I didn't actually let him dangle, like sort of suggestively dangle steak into my mouth. I wasn't drinking that night, which I think really helped. The mate I was with had an entire bottle of wine to himself and was like, I thought that was pretty good. And I was like, are you kidding? So yeah, Salt Bay, hugely notorious. His restaurant in Knightsbridge, where he was like charging ridiculous fees for gold-plated terrible slabs of beef, and it was like a weird immersive experience where he just toured the room, picking up babies, doing his weird grimacing smile that kind of makes you think like he's had something weird happen to him, and just being quite bizarre. And has it
gone now?
I think it's still clinging on. Yeah, they draw the curtains, which probably feels wise, like in terms of like, it could be full, guys. Come on in.
Probably is.
So probably one of Salt Bay's like kind of outriders. But there've been a few. But I'm very sort of post and ghost. I kind of don't really read the comments of things. Yeah.
And what about the review that you got wrong, where you nailed your colours to the mast?
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
Are there any? I mean, maybe you're the best stock picker out there.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, really. There's definitely been places that I've like really loved and gone back to, and it hasn't quite been as good.
Yeah, right.
Story Cellar.
Yeah.
I really loved. I had a great lunch there. And I went back and it wasn't quite the same. But that was a while ago now. But it happens all the time. It literally always happens. And actually what's even more terrifying is that people are always asking for recommendations. You're sending people out, and so you're just kind of like, oh my god, don't let me down.
Yeah,
like,
be
honestly,
good,
guys, please be good. And it's a very personal thing, right? You must have this all the time where people all like. I sent my cousin to Rochelle Canteen, like raving about it, and he was not having it at all. And so you feel like it reflects quite poorly on you, doesn't it? Yeah. But probably Story Cellar comes to mind.
It's probably time we fire through your go-to locations.
Yeah, go on.
How long do you have?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've got 5, 10.
5?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to quickly say, was it Grasser? You gave a bad review to, but that seems to be well.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's any good, but like it seems to be full.
I did not like Grasso. No. And actually sometimes, almost in some ways, I mean, Stars is a whole other podcast, because I do feel like they're a bit of a distraction and they're like useless blunt instruments. People just focus on
behind.
Stars.
You been there yet? Sure.
No, I haven't actually. But Grasso, I almost wish I'd given it 2, to be honest. I think
really,
it was very good. Yeah, I thought it was just,
Were you in charge of those Stars?
Yeah. Sometimes there's a conversation.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a back and forth, but I tended to stick to my guns.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Right, go to dedications. Jimmy, we're going to have to get you back for part 2.
I know,
because
just like Top Job.
we haven't touched this. I like Top Job.
Yeah.
But what's your go-to weeknight restaurant? Nothing fancy, but you just can.
Go-to weeknight restaurant. I would probably go to this is what happens when like you've got kids and like you sort of are like, I don't know, like Deliveroo. No, let me think. My go-to weeknight restaurant, I would probably actually there's a little place near me, like maybe I'd go to Morby because it's quite near me. I'd probably like go there. I know that feels kind of fancy adjacent, but it's quite a good value. They're doing brilliant things. I think it's really interesting the way different chefs with like immigrant heritage and like are like sort of adapting wine bars and kind of like, you know, like you've got the like Carlong, you've got the one in like Stokey, and you've got Belly, like a Filipino one like opening up, and you've got like a Vietnamese one opening in Peckham. So yeah, Morby. I'd probably nip into Morby and like have some. Beautiful. Yeah.
What about for a blowout celebratory supper when you get the Observer gig? Where we go?
Do you know what? I went to Quo the other day, Quo Vardis, and had a very, very good lunch.
Get looked after, don't you? It's nice.
So I might go there and like sort of really go for it. Yeah. I'd probably do that or
start with martinis.
Yeah. Always. Yeah.
Try to get the big man at the kitchen to join you.
Yeah, he's not shy, is he?
Yeah, it's nice.
Oh, he's such a lovely guy. Yeah.
What about your go-to pub? A lot of people don't go to pubs.
No.
Talk to.
Oh man, I love a pub. Absolutely love the pub. The one that I'm in a lot. I used to go to the Ship all the time. The one, the Steve Lamacq one, which is how it's known, like the kind of New Cavendish Street. Is it?
Yeah.
Not Wandsworth Roundabout.
Yeah, I do really like that pub, but the one that I do tend to end up in, and I'm always kind of like trying to get my mates to go to, is the George. I do love the George.
Where's the George?
The one on Great Portland Street. The
okay,
JKS one.
Okay, yeah.
Which I really, really love, and I would always kind of nudge people towards as a kind of as a Devonshire dupe.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Like amazing Irish coffee there. It's incredible.
Really?
Yeah, really good. It's a total thing, and people just go in there for the Irish coffee.
Oh, I like that.
Really good food. They show the football. They're not too like above showing the football, which I kind of really rate. They play good music in there, which I'm on board with. Callum, I have to shout out, who like runs JKS's pubs. He's great. Brilliant. It's a lovely pub.
Get up the George.
Really good.
Right. We're going to go away for a dream long weekend to eat and drink. Where would you be going? What would you be eating?
Oh, wow. Do you know what? Oh, man. This is really good. Do you know, I ran the Berlin Marathon.
Congratulations.
Thanks. It was a while ago now. So, yeah, no. It was a while ago now. Like a couple of years ago.
You happy to discuss your time?
Oh, bang on 4.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah. My PB is 3:52, so I wanted to kind of get like sub 4.
Pretty good.
I couldn't quite, just like cramped up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love Berlin.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not especially original, but I really love. I don't know, like you could go a number of different ways, couldn't you? But and I ate really well. I wish I could remember the name of like the restaurants. And then we went for a Burgermeister, which is kind of like one of the OG kind of. I remember going there years and having like their amazing burgers. And so I'd probably go there.
Berlin.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, maybe sort of. Just sort of. I just love it as a city.
Yeah, nice.
Really cool.
People say the best donors in the world are in Berlin.
Yes. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Yeah.
Well, Jimmy, you've been incredible. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to put a link for Picky in the bio of the podcast. Everyone should get hold of it. It's a beautiful book. Ben,
it's a proper
you've
read.
enjoyed turning the pages.
It's unbelievable.
We're going to finish as we always do by asking, what's your go-to 3-course meal?
Oh, go-to 3-course meal. Oh my god. I've always really loved, and this is kind of a running thread in Picky, I've always really loved sliders and burgers. Like, I think there's something about a burger that you can eat in like multiples of like, two or three. Yeah. So I'd probably have some sort of like slider as like a sort of
multiple
snack.
burgers, little burgers.
Yeah. I'd probably have those. Try not to fill up too much on those. I'll go to the mains. I probably would have jollof. I mean, it's kind of overplayed, but I absolutely love it. And then for pudding, oh man, I always love a Sundae. I do. This is quite a basic trio of things, but I always love a Sundae. Those are probably the things.
It's always exciting seeing it come out.
I think so, like a proper one. I remember having one on a plane once.
Wow. Sundae on a plane?
Where I got flown first class for one of the few times. Yeah. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it.
I didn't know they were serving Sundays. I would break the bank to go and have a Sundae.
How have you done this? And it wasn't like very simple. I'm genuinely better than some I've had in restaurants. Like hot chocolate sauce and like a maraschino cherry on it. Yeah, incredible.
Mile High Club, that's the move.
Listen, that's what you want to be doing.
I will just say that was a really long time ago. And when I went to Nigeria for Picky for the book, I was absolutely not in first class, mate. I was wedged in with a sort of tray of passable jollof. Your jollof is better than the one I had.
There we go.
Thank God for that.
Really good. I really appreciate it.
Well, Jimmy, you've been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for coming in. Hopefully we'll get a part 2 out of you in the near future.
Cool. Thanks for having me, guys.
All we've got time for. If you're watching on YouTube, then please subscribe to the channel, leave us a wonderful review. And don't forget to use the discount code GOTOBLINQ and you'll get a month free for the greatest POS software in the world.
It's a game changer.
What song do you want us to play you out with?
Oh my God. There's maybe just anything by Salt, SAULT. Just any Salt.
Nice.
Perfect.
Loving a bit of Salt at the moment.